I saw something you tweeted earlier this week that I was really entertained by. The U.S. women's soccer team, which, by the way, in like 2015 when they won the Women's World Cup, I was in Vancouver. I took my family. They were as beloved of an American sports team as there could be. Everybody loved the U.S. women. Over the last several years, their overall approval rate, I think it's fair to say, in the United States of America has plummeted substantially. They lost 3-0 to Sweden after kneeling yet again. And you said, Buck Sexton, you were rooting for Sweden. You have abandoned the U.S. women, almost based entirely on politics, I'm presuming, and you actually enjoy seeing them lose the women's soccer team.
Absolutely. Go Sweden. Fantastic to see those ladies. I gotta say, not a hard team to root for as a guy. They're
good-looking women on the Swedish team. You might have noticed.
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I'm just saying.
I think it's offensive to judge women by their looks now, Buck. How sexist of you to even notice a good-looking woman.
I was pretty astounded that even in this current era, you know, Boris Becker, who was one of the tennis greats, and I did watch a fair amount of tennis growing up. You know, he referred to a player's girlfriend at Wimbledon, or fiance, as pretty, and there were people who were upset by this.
Yes.
Yeah. This is utter madness. You know,
this happened a few years ago. Brent Musburger, one of the Alabama quarterbacks' girlfriends, was in the crowd, and he said something like, "Man, you quarterbacks, you all get the best-looking girl. She's a good-looking woman." And by the way, quarterbacks do tend to do pretty well with girls based on, you know, all of recorded history of sports. I actually remember, Buck, when I was a kid, I remember we got to sit down close for an Atlanta Braves game, I think it was. And I was probably like 10 or 11, and I looked around. There were a ton of really good-looking women. And I said to my dad, why are there so many, you know, like really pretty women here? And he said, well, this is a lot of the players' wives. And I remember saying like, oh, so baseball players in the major leagues, they have good-looking wives? And my dad was like, yeah, they do pretty well for themselves.
Yes,
but it is also kind of funny.
This is also known as observing objective reality around you. But you're not allowed to do this anymore. And I'd also note that our friend Jesse Kelly, who's also on our network, he put out, did you see his list of the 10 most attractive members of Congress?
Oh God, did he get crushed for that?
Gosh. I mean, it's just so funny.
Happen?
That was yesterday.
Oh,
he put out
funny.
a list. It may have been, and I'm quoting here, the 10 hottest women in Congress. I can't remember exactly the verbiage, but it was basically an attractive members of Congress.
He should have put like 2 dudes in there and just blown everybody's mind, especially if he had a guy as the hottest member of Congress. That's so people were terrified. How dare he notice good-looking women?
I just thought you were allowed to say nice things, you know, like
right.
when people come up to me,
ugliest women.
You know, we got two radio hosts here with good hair. You know, and so when people come up to the street, they're like, hey, I like your radio show, but you've actually got good hair. That makes my day, probably my week, you know. I'm sure you feel the same way. If people come up to you, they're like, hey, you're a sports radio host, but, you know, you're an athletic-looking guy, and, you know, you got a lovely wife. And we like nice things. Anyway, I'm trying to tell everybody, can't we all just take a compliment and roll with it? But we can't even agree on mascots, Clay. That's another thing, too.
Well, we're going to get to mascots, but what percentage of people do you think are rooting against the U.S. women's soccer team because they find them to be, and let me say this, by the way, big picture. What is so frustrating to me about the U.S. women's soccer team is they had an opportunity to use their platform in 2015 and in 2019 to point out that the reason they dominate, Buck, do you know if you look at every women's soccer match and just consider which country has freer women, you can basically pick the winner of the match. Because people say, well, how come the U.S. men are nowhere near as good as the U.S. women? That's because around the world, most good male athletes get identified and they're able to expend their athleticism to the fullest of their ability because men have advantages. But, you know, it's not a surprise that our women would do better than women in, let's say, Iran, where they're not even allowed to play outside of burqas, right? Yeah. Basically, like, this is not a big surprise that girls who can wear shorts, it's kind of a decent symbol that they might be better. Instead, they ripped America instead of trying to lift up the world to believe in American ideas.
If you take a knee, I'm rooting against you. And that's really what it comes out. You take a knee, I'm rooting against you. That's just how it's going to go from here on out. And whether that's as a league or as a team or as an individual, because I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. And it's disrespectful. So yeah, I was psyched to see the Swedish ladies, doing well. And, maybe they should follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Maybe they should become fans of the show. I'm just putting it out there.
We're big in Sweden.
Huge,
Huge in Sweden. And so you got that insanity that's going on. So do you think, we were talking about this, I'm not sure that there has ever been less interest in an Olympics. Because usually the Olympics is kind of a big deal. People come together. They want, especially the Summer Olympics, because there have been so many big iconic stars. I feel like this is landing on deaf ears to a large extent. Do you have that sense too?
Yeah, and when you've got empty stadiums, I mean, a part of this, we harken back in our minds here all the way to, ancient Rome and the Colosseum and this, the theatricality of these events at the Olympics. Obviously ancient Greece where the Olympics started, but I was thinking gladiator in my mind. You think of these events that happen with massive crowds and the energy. And, honestly, watching really fast people run when there's no crowd there, it's just a different spectator experience. It just doesn't feel like it has the same energy behind it. And, this is, I think there's also just a lot of people right now feel like, is there the possibility that their weird COVID restrictions could actually become a problem for some of these teams? But I'll be honest, I'm not really a big Olympics guy. It was just not a surprise to you, I'm sure. But I'm not a huge Olympic guy. I watched the person who wins the fastest, the 100-meter dash or whatever. That's what I watch.
Yeah, and even that, Usain Bolt, who is Jamaican, he's retiring. Michael Phelps, who's one of the greatest Olympians ever, people could have a rooting interest for him over the last, 20 years, it feels like, that he's been representing the United States. And then you toss in what I think is a pretty significant factor, the time difference of what time it is in Japan versus the United States. And I feel like these are going to be, this is my prediction. I think this is going to be the least watched Olympics that has ever existed in the United States. Because for so long, this was something that united everyone. I think there are a lot of people out there listening to us right now that are with you and not rooting for the U.S. women over politics and statements that they're making. But also, I think that there's just a general despair about the idea of how many women are going to and men are going to protest, and people are like, I just don't have time for it.
Do you know that the trampoline is an Olympic event? I was just checking this. I was wondering what the trampoline, water polo is, which I think watching water polo may be the most boring spectator sport. That's right, water polo fans, you can come at me, I'll take it. But looking at, because come on, you can't even see what's going on, right? You look at I'm looking at the list of all the different sports that they have. And
I have them by popularity. Let me see if I can get you to guess. What do you think the most anticipated event is at the Tokyo Olympics?
Basketball.
No.
Really?
Basketball is, this is the Morning Consult, a poll that they did of Americans. Most anticipated events at the Olympics. I'll give you the hint here. Basketball is sixth. Sixth on the sports
that's
list.
That's much lower than I thought it would have been. I love tennis, but that's probably not even the top 10.
Tennis is 10.
Okay. Well, let's see. I was pretty close.
Yeah.
I have honestly. Is it track and field?
Track and field is fourth.
What's number one? You're keeping me in suspense
number one.
here.
I think you'll get when I say it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Gymnastics. Right? There is a massive... Does that surprise you?
That does surprise me. I wouldn't think gymnastics would be the number one.
Destroys everything else. Second most beloved or anticipated event at the Tokyo Olympics, swimming, which surprised me a little bit. I would have gotten gymnastics. I wouldn't have gotten
But these
swimming.
are for Americans, right? I think we've gotten used to... Because Michael Phelps is just in this other category of winner, that I think that's what's made swimming so popular for us, because we just love those medals. We're Americans. We like winning.
This surprised me too. Third most popular, diving, which feels like it's kind of swimming, but it is kind of cool to watch from those super high dives, like how perfect people land in the water. And also the fact that you convince yourself that like what a good dive is and what a dive is not.
I see. That's interesting to me because these are also events where it's, the fastest runner is there's not a judge decide like that. This is just reality.
Yes.
So these are things where the judges are making determinations about who it's subjective. Let's be honest. Those are, gymnastics is a subjective event. Diving is a subjective event. That's interesting to me.
Track and field, which you got is 4. This one also surprised me. Basketball you got at 6. Beach volleyball.
Oh, yes. Oh,
there's a lot of good-looking girls. I think that probably factors in.
We don't have to say these things out loud, buddy.
I'd say it out loud.
No,
I say it out loud. I tell people exactly
beach volleyball. Maybe I appreciate
men
the spike
play beach volleyball too.
Yeah, well, yes. By the way, do we have ratings on which one is more watched?
Oh, I bet women's beach volleyball is way more watched than men's. But here's the question. As we get ready to go to break, I'll come back. What are the least popular sports, according to Americans, that they are least interested in? I doubt very many people will guess these, but I will tell you the sports that Americans are not interested in watching. I gave you the top 5 or 6.
I think my beloved table tennis, also known as ping pong, is probably on that list because I am, for an amateur, freakishly good at ping pong, and it makes me very sad that that's one that doesn't get the proper love in this country that I think.
Should we bring in the crew and let them guess? Allie is texting me right now.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear from our team here, from the EIB squad.
Yes, let's bring in the EIB squad, and we will see if any of them can get one of the 3 least popular sports at the Olympics.
And let's also bring in all of you, our EIB fam all across the country. 800-282-2882. The lines. It's Open Line Friday. We'll get to it.